and you'll notice that the loading screen turns into the first environment that you're put into. And before I even move, I want to just do a nice 360 to show you that sort of what, in this exploration of gender, the very first thing that you're dropped into is this completely blank horizon. And it's really important that it's a horizon. So for those of you who aren't familiar with like the concept of philosophical horizons, it's this idea of something like, or sort of the concept of an idea that is sort of like within view but kind of always beyond reach. And in many ways, gender is an idea that is sort of like always in view but can never be perfectly grasped. And this game does a really, really good job in terms of its very basic mechanics of showing that. So what do we do? Well, let's approach the question. Let's literally run up to the question and click on it. And when we click on it, we get this little like 2-point perspective box that we can enter into. Now, it would be a mistake to enter into this box because you would already miss like the first incredible, aside from the horizon thing, the first important visual metaphor of the game. So let's approach it a little bit more, and then let's strafe around it. See that? See that? So, what is presented to you as a simple binary, pink and blue. Are we the pink gender or are we the blue gender? And it seems like a natural environment, you know, if you follow, you know, ordinary, like the way you're supposed to play video games is like, oh, I'm supposed to enter into the room and I'm supposed to pick a door, right? Well, maybe not. And there we go. Then that brings us to this sort of central question of, so, okay, it's presenting to you like the ordinary gender binary. So for those of you who aren't familiar with like the color coding of like typical like male female things, we got pink for something and blue for something, whatever you think they are. And it's important that it's using the colors. It's using these really sort of basic semiotic principles, not using words, not using terminology, but using something that is sort of like not universally recognized, but isn't sort of dependent upon language. And then when you enter into the space, you're like, okay, so I'm going to go in and be like, yeah, but what if I don't want to choose this? Yeah, what if I'm like, wait a minute, what if I don't want to be the pink gender or the blue gender? I want out. Too bad. You can't get out. Because once you enter into the gender binary, you can't really escape. In other words, even as you challenge it, so this is a dialectical principle at play. Once you enter into sort of like the discourse of the gender binary, you can challenge it, you can subvert it, but you can't necessarily escape it. So let's be like, okay, so I was raised the blue gender, so let's okay, so here we go, blue gender door. Wait, what? Click on it, doesn't do anything. Well, screw you guys, I'll go into the pink gender door. Nope, can't go in there either. What is this crap? we've entered into this room and like what we're inside the gender binary and we have to pick something and it won't even let us pick anything. Like, what the hell's going on? Screw this. Wait, what? Wait, what? Oh crap. And you get dropped through the floor. So welcome to what is your gender? What's your gender? So then we went, okay. So now we're in this room, femme. So the concept of femme that we're seeing now, this is an interesting point. So let's read it first and then I'll explain why I think this is interesting. Femme, or spelled either way, is a term that refers to a queer person whose gender expression is considered to be feminine. Femme was originally used to distinguish feminine, lesbian, and bisexual women from butch women, and is still one of the main uses of the term. It is common for trans and non-binary individuals to use the term to refer to their identity or expression, even if they do not identify as lesbian or bisexual women. Also, there is a cast of cisgender men who will refer to themselves as femme as well. It's not super common, but it is a thing you see. Now, the reason why it's interesting that we see this word in this way is because we're sort of looking at it from a kind of gallery perspective. So this notion of like being femme is sort of a queering of one of sort of the two poles of the gender binary. In other words, when you say femme, you don't mean female in a conventional sense. You don't mean woman in the sort of conventional patriarchal sense. What you mean is like a recuperation of that identity and sort of bringing it into sort of like, in other words, you're taking one of the two boxes and bringing it into the realm of many boxes. And so the reason why we see this from this kind of like Galleria perspective is because we're viewing something from the perspective of the sort of the many boxes, if you will, of sort of like this various like panoply of gender and sexual identities, but we're looking in on this thing that comes from the binary. And it's being integrated into our surroundings in a number of interesting ways. It's being both held at a distance, but also like, you know, the color of the word is being integrated into the color of these like see-through, what would this be, like a balustrade? And again, we see it as if from a distance, but also with a kind of familiarity and with a kind of, like a kind of I wish I could describe the feeling. I'm not very good at describe as a cisgender white man. I'm not very good at describing my feelings. But the feeling is kind of like a welcoming or like a homecoming. That's probably a better way to describe it. That sort of like it's like, hey, welcome home, welcome back into sort of like the multiplicity of like human identities, rather than like, yeah. Okay, so this is one definitely can't leave without showing you this combination, the sequence of stuff. So I'm gonna go down here first. Okay, first rule worth noting: we can't jump off. We're safe. We're always safe. You may have a feeling of vertigo, going, "Oh boy, that's a void." Yeah, no, this. Lauren, you're right. This game has a lot of love put into it. It's kind of astonishingly like, I don't know. It's like somebody took a lot of just personal care with this game. Okay, so there's this like tree up here, and you'll notice as you pan, the colors change almost imperceptibly. You see that? See how now it's starting to change to green as you move around and you come back, and it's now green again. It's greener. Come back. We go down here, and then it starts to get washed out a little bit. But now notice, where are we? We are on the ground floor of the fem room, and it will say the same thing as it did before. So now we're no longer along the mezzanine. We're actually in sort of the... Actually, mezzanine is a really good description because we're sort of like coming out onto a stage. And again, the pillar element. This pillar element here is very similar to what we saw in the fluid room, in the gender fluid room. And now that we can sort of get up and close and personal with the femme, now...
How can we subvert and use concepts that are tightly interwoven with patriarchal structures?
Again, that's really sort of the pertinent question, and it goes back to what I was saying earlier, is that like there is this thing that comes from the gender binary that you want to pull back into sort of like the multiple space, the sort of the multiplicity, the many boxes, as I said earlier. Or as Lauren is saying, sort of like taking things from patriarchal structures. Patriarchal structures, these are structural elements. And earlier, when you had gender fluidity, what was it fluidizing, if you will? The structural element. Literally built, like, that's what I mean. The level, so I don't want to belabor this point too much, because maybe it's too much of a thinky thing to go through. And maybe it's not like, blood pumping. Maybe you guys really would rather watch me just like, do quests in Final Fantasy XIV for a couple of hours. But like, it's these tiny little things, these little things that you notice that really, so the name of the game is What's Your Gender? Which it's worth noting, was not a game title. So if you'll notice that like currently I'm in the category just chatting because I could not pick this game. I mean that's true of like a lot of indie games from itch.io. But yeah, no, I was not allowed to pick this game as something that I could stream and like formally announce. But yeah, What's Your Gender is the name of the game, and we'll go back to the title sequence again in a second. So that's just one aspect of this. So now we're approaching this from a different perspective. We're seeing sort of like the patriarchal structure here. And we go back. Oh, hey, the tree up there is a different color now. And so notice how, okay, I have to get, where can I see this well enough from? So we know that that Femme is in that room. And there is this tree that is sort of constantly shifting colors. The colors are themselves derived from the colors on the queer flag. I hope that's the correct. And I don't actually know what the technical term for it is. This is sort of the root of this tree. If you see the roots coming down from it, is this thing here. Is this notion of sort of like this like again, the structure support, like the patriarchal structure, this sort of like thing that is derived from like the gender binary. It is at the base of, is at the root of this tree, but this tree grows out into something that is much more than, notice how it has all these like, what almost look like shards coming off as branches. And so let's go up to the tree for a sec. Also, like, even though it's built out of very like basic blocky elements, I actually find this tree to be really beautiful. Maybe that's just me. And as you can go around it, and again, like the subtle shifts in color. So again, it goes back to that problem of sort of like the gender discourse is always there as kind of the foundation, like sort of the gender binary and that thing that we were sort of born into. But out of that can grow this incredibly beautiful multiplicity. And that, in many ways, to me, is sort of like the ultimate visual metaphor in the game. This idea that from the patriarchal structure can grow this other organic, because notice how like boxy and like blocky and sort of rigid and straight that sort of the Femme room is. Whereas you get up here and sort of the tree that grows out of it sort of like is not straight, it's crooked, so to speak, but it grows in all sorts of different directions and it feels organic and it feels alive in the way that, that other one felt kind of sterile.